Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. 240 years ago, Thomas Jefferson wrote a book in which he discussed climate change in Virginia. He said, "A change in our climate is taking place. Both heats and colds are becoming much more moderate within the memory even of the middle-aged. Snows are less frequent and less deep. They do not often lie more than 1, 2, or 3 days and very rarely a week. They are remembered to have been formerly frequent, deep, and of long continuance. The elderly inform me that Earth used to be covered with snow about 3 months in every year. The rivers, which then seldom failed to freeze over in the course of the winter, scarcely ever do so now. This change has produced an unfortunate fluctuation between heat and cold in the spring of the year, which is very fatal to fruits." So climate change in the year 1781 was making the weather unpredictable and was threatening their agricultural output. And there was something else going on right around that time too, a series of very violent hurricanes. More than 1/4 of the deadliest Atlantic hurricanes of the last 500 years occurred right around the time of the Revolutionary War, including the deadliest in 1780. The hurricanes of 1780 wiped out every single structure in Barbados. 24,000 people were killed. The wind blew so strong that it stripped the bark off the trees. Meteorologists are of the opinion that this effect is produced on wind velocities of over 200 miles per hour. An earthquake was felt during the passage of the Great Hurricane. The noise was so deafening that people could not hear their own voices. British Admiral Rodney wrote that the wind carried aloft 100 feet the heavy cannons of the ground fortifications. Let's look at the hurricanes of 1780. On June 13th, a hurricane swept through the Caribbean, killing roughly 4,000 to 5,000 people. On August 24th, 1780, a hurricane destroyed nearly every building on Grand Isle, Louisiana. A hurricane at the beginning of October killed more than 1,000 people. The biggest storm occurred on October 10th with winds over 200 miles per hour. It devastated Barbados, Martinique, and St. Lucia. According to this source, the total death toll is estimated at 27,500, the deadliest Atlantic hurricane on record. And then another hurricane came a week later, destroyed much of the European naval fleets, and killed about 2,000 people. Pretty brutal conditions in the Atlantic during 1780, but the Pacific was even worse. During July 1780, a typhoon killed 100,000 people along the coast of China. Every building in Barbados was destroyed during 1780 by hurricanes. But the Prime Minister was in Glasgow last week, saving the world from climate change.
Please welcome the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley.
Your Royal Highness, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the pandemic has taught us that national solutions to global problems do not work. We come to Glasgow with global ambition to save our people and to save our planet, but we now find 3 gaps. On mitigation, climate pledges or NDCs. Without more, we will leave the world on a pathway to 2.7 degrees, and with more, we are still likely to get to 2 degrees.
She sounds like quite an expert. She can forecast future temperatures of the Earth within 1/10 of a degree. She wants to reduce CO2 levels in the atmosphere back to what they were like back in 1780, when the climate was safe and stable. If climate alarmists were aware of their own country's histories, many of them might think differently. If they knew how awful the weather used to be, they probably wouldn't fantasize about going back to those days. Modern climate science was actually born 175 years ago, March 11, 1846. That great changes have taken place in the climate of Australia, all testimonies satisfactorily prove. The Aborigines say that the climate has undergone this change since white man came in country. This approach to climate science has stuck with us ever since. If you don't like the weather, blame it on white men. Blaming white men for climate change, particularly conservative ones, is right at the core of modern climate science. Had Thomas Jefferson implemented a carbon tax and climate lockdowns, all of this bad weather might have been avoided. Toto thinks that human beings tend to be very irrational creatures. You can visit him, Kyrie, and Caesar on the web at realclimatescience.com.